You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
This is the Daniel Monday Night Community Show on demand through YouTube. Thank you very much for choosing to listen to us through this method. If you'd like to keep up to date with when I add new interviews, then subscribe to this channel. It's time to welcome back our regular visitor, Lauren, for our regular book club book review. Lauren, as always, it's great to have you here in the studio.
Thanks for having me back, Daniel. Thank you very much.
So, just refresh our listeners as to what this month's book is.
So, this month we are going to be discussing Grandpa's Great Escape, which is the latest David Walliams children's book. I've been quite looking forward to doing a section on children's books because I loved books as a child, and there's a vast catalogue of books in my head that I think all kids should read. And I'd heard wonderful things about David Walliams' children's books. I'd read Mr. Stink, and I'd also read Billionaire Boy, but this one was really, really great. So it tells a story of a young lad, Jack. It's set in the 80s, and Jack's grandpa fought in the Second World War. Jack's grandpa means the absolute world to Jack, and although he's getting older and more forgetful, he still thinks that his grandpa is the best thing ever, and he loves to hear his tales of Spitfires and the adventures he got up to during the World War. Jack's grandpa one night escapes both his own flat and then Jack's parents' house, and ends up having to be put into the dreaded Twilight Towers, which is an old people's home with a very, very dodgy owner and some questionable nurses looking after the older people. And it's up to Jack to help get Grandpa out. So this book is a lovely, lovely book. I was just saying it's quite large for a children's book, but it is illustrated throughout, some pages with double page illustrations. The text is really big in places, so although it looks quite meaty, I'd definitely say it's definitely doable as a child, and to read to a child, they'd absolutely love it. I personally, although I looked through the book, I did listen to the audiobook of this, which is narrated by David Walliams himself. He does an amazing job of the voices. He does all of the voices apart from the voice of Grandpa, which is done by Michael Gambon, who is Dumbledore in the Harry Potter films, and his range of voices is just amazing, and it's the voice he does for Jack's mum is just hilarious. And he's got a really great way with describing the book. Obviously he knows the book inside out, he wrote it himself, and I just think it really added to the listening experience, to the reading experience, just being able to listen to it. And I definitely recommend it for people who are going on a long journey. I really think that would definitely keep kids interested.
So what did you think of our book this month?
I really enjoyed it. In particular, I was impressed by the audiobook, as I said earlier, and the voices and how much fun it was to listen to. It was really funny. I imagine for children, and me as an older reader, there were some bits in it which really tickled me. I got the book out of the library, and I love the illustrations and how the font's used in the story. So the layout of the font, the size, whether it's bold or in italics or something, it really adds to the story and the way that you would read it to a child, or how a child would read it. I've picked out an example here, and it's talking about when there's two policemen interviewing Jack, and one of the policemen's called Kimberly, even though he is a male, and the word Kimberly in the book is written in bold and all sort of like loopy handwriting, very girly, and that just adds to it, and I just think it's really great. I grew up with Roald Dahl being my favourite children's books of choice, and this really reminded me of Roald Dahl. There's always like some sort of madcap scheme with a baddie who gets his or her comeuppance, and the bonkers plan pays off, and I really recognise that in this book. I think David Walliams writes really well. He really connects with the children he's writing for. I actually posted a photo of this book on Facebook when I was reading it, and somebody commented me to say that her daughter had been reading it in her bedroom, and that she could just hear her laughing her head off in her bedroom, and she was reading the book in there on her own, and I just thought that was lovely. So yeah, I was really impressed with this as a children's book, and I definitely urge all ages to read it. I really think there's something for all ages in there. I found it funny, and I'm almost 30.
I think you're going to next go over books children now love.
Yeah, so I'm lucky enough to have a few teachers in my life as friends and family, and I've utilised them this month to find out what books are really popular with the children at the moment. So we'll start with the younger guys, which are the 5 to 7 year olds. David Walliams is still a very popular author with the 5 to 7 year olds, in particular Mr. Stink. Julia Donaldson is a popular author, as is Adam Blade, and Roald Dahl, who, as I mentioned earlier, is one of my absolute favourites. Going up to the 9 to 10 year olds, I've got a few books here, and I've also got a few comments that the children have said. So I've got Running Wild by Michael Morpurgo, who's a very popular author. I've got Mia, who's 9, said that it was heartwarming and every page she wanted to read more. Diary of a Wimpy Kid by Jeff Kenny, which is a very, very popular series. But Lindsay said, I enjoyed this book because it was filled with funny jokes and was very comical. Another David Walliams one that we mentioned earlier, Mr. Stink, and Elsbeta said, I enjoyed the book because it was a happy ending. And Lily goes on to say that on the corners of the pages were dirt blobs. And I think that just reflects what I was saying earlier about Grandpa's Great Escapes and how the whole page is really involved in the story, from the font to the illustrations, everything's there. And finally, there's a series of books by Liz Pichon called the Tom Gates series. And Hugh said that I loved it and it's the funniest book he's read. So that's for the 9 to 10 year olds. And then for the 12 to 13, they're a bit more, they're getting into the sort of like the YA books, which is young adult, which I did a segment on one of my first ever book clubs here on the radio. The Hunger Games is very popular, the Maze Runner trilogy, and again Michael Morpurgo, Private Peaceful, that's a book that I've read, very hard hitting book. So yeah, there's some books that the children, straight from the children's mouths, that they're interested in at the moment.
What books would you recommend?
So as I said earlier, Grandpa's Great Escape by David Walliams, I would recommend that to all ages. I think it really does span the years. I think somebody as young as 5 or 7 would find it really fun. The illustrations are great, and all the way up to me, who is almost 30, really, really enjoyed it and found some really funny bits in there, and just I loved the sort of heartwarming story behind it. These books that I've picked as recommendations, I also think they're very similar to that. So some other David Walliams I've picked are Billionaire Boy, Gangster Granny and Mr. Stink. As we said earlier, these are doing the rounds of being made into sort of 90-minute feature-length programmes, sort of cult Christmas watching. They always have a great cast and they're always really fun to watch. Roald Dahl is a favourite author of mine. In particular, my favourites are Matilda and SEO Trot. I adore them all, but Matilda I love very much, because it's all about a young girl who just loved reading, and when I was younger I did think I was Matilda. And I love SEO Trot. It's a really cute little love story about an old man and an old woman who bond over a tortoise. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, George's Marvellous Medicine and Fantastic Mr. Fox are all wonderful. All Roald Dahl's wonderful, and I think that's, again, is something for everyone there. I also absolutely loved The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis when I was younger. That was one of my absolute favourites. And as I was getting a little bit older, I used to love Jacqueline Wilson, which I was surprised wasn't mentioned by anyone. I don't know if they're quite as popular as they used to be. But The Bed and Breakfast star, Tracy Beaker and Double Act, all of those were just books that I absolutely adored when I was younger.
So, Lauren, what is next month's book?
So next month we're going to be discussing a book called So You've Been Publicly Shamed by Jon Ronson. This is a non-fiction book. Obviously non-fiction is a hugely broad category, but it's becoming more and more popular, and I thought that this sort of corner of non-fiction would be a good choice, as it's all to do with social media and people's presence online. So I'm going to read the back of it because I haven't read it myself, but I'll read the back and we'll discover together. When Jon Ronson noticed a great renaissance of public shame in sweeping our land, he decided to investigate. At first it seemed like the democratisation of justice. The silent majority were getting a voice, but what did we do with it? Jon Ronson travelled the world meeting the subject of high-profile public shamings. They're mostly like us, people who, say, made a bad joke on social media. But when their transgression is revealed, collective outrage circles with hurricane force and they're torn apart, demonised, sometimes even fired from their jobs. Do they deserve it? Are our actions justified? Or are we using shame as a form of social control? So I thought this would be great with how popular Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and everything are at the moment. I thought this would be a really good sort of non-fiction book to go into. We're going to be discussing this on Monday the 14th of March at 8 p.m. You can get in touch with me via my email, which is laurenandthebooks@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter, as Daniel said, @LaurenTheBooks, and my YouTube channel is www.youtube.com/LaurenandTheBooks. And just going forward, I think we're going to do a few more shows. We're going to do a show based based on graphic novels, which is something that I've certainly come to in the past sort of year or so and absolutely enjoying, and also translated fiction, which is something that's getting more and more popular. So yes, next month, So You've Been Publicly Shamed by John Ronson, 14th of March.
Lauren, as always, thank you very much for coming along.
Thanks for having me.
Next month. And it's well worth checking out Lauren's YouTube channel. It's always good because it's an area, booktube, that I wasn't aware of until we started doing this. So it's always well worth a look. And don't forget to contact Lauren if you're reading next month's book as well.